We've kind of built our torch and ready to go. I'm just going to do a couple of little tweaks on it, which I didn't do before. I'm just going to set the origin to the geometry and set the origin to the geometry, just so they're both equalized, and so that this is kind of, in a good position to model. I'm just going to stick it in the center. Right. So the next thing is that what we want to do is we want to make the fire. The problem is that if we can use, there's a particle system in Blender, and it will render out fire, and it's beautiful. I mean, it looks amazing, but it requires like the liquid engine from the 3D software, and just to build the fire as a 3D object takes probably around 30 hours, and then to render it you're looking at about the same, and so it takes too long. And so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to cheat, and so I'm going to show you how to do that. So first off, let's give this a new texture, and we want to kind of make this, at the moment it's a principled, and we'll get rid of that and just add a different shader, and we're going to add an emission, and we'll just stick that in there like that. Okay, and the problem is that when we are lighting in Blender, what we get is emission works in cycles but not in Eevee, and I'll show you that in a minute. But I'm going to build the fire, and this is going to be a bit of a cheat, but it works really well. So what we're going to do is going to go File, Import images as planes. If you haven't got that set up yet, go to Edit, Preferences, and then go Add-ons, and go look for Import, and images as planes is really useful. And then what we're going to go is File, Import images as planes, and I've got it as a texture, and I'll give it to you, and I'm just going to open that. And this is basically a looping picture of some fire, which is here, and our sequence is 250 frames long, and this is 88, which is not long enough, so we'll make it cyclic, and then that doesn't matter, and it will just loop. Okay, so the next thing is that what we want to do is snap this to this. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go Object, Snap to Active. I'm just going to add that to my favorites, and then now what we've got is we've got this and this image, and we just scale it up, is of some fire looping, and that is going to kind of go on top. And I'm just going to go to Layout, and that is going to go on top of our let me just spin it around so it's the right way around, roughly. That's close enough. Sorry about the noises of the lorries outside, it's not me. And I'm going to move this into place, get it so you're happy with it in terms of scale. That kind of looks about right to me. Right, now we're going to do some tricky stuff, because what we want to do is this has got this parented to it. This is all part of the same object. That's all cool in the gang. And then this needs to be parented to that, but it needs to be parented in a slightly different way. So we're going to go P, and rather than parenting into the object, we kind of don't want to do, we just want to parent it to the vertex. And what that means is that it's parenting it, but it's only location, it's nothing else. And that's kind of it. And then we're going to add a light. So I'm going to add a point light, and then I am going to go to here, press Q, and then I am going to go Object, and I'm going to go Snap to Active. I'm going to right click that, Snap to Active, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that point light, and I'm going to move that kind of out here, because I want this to be sort of lighting our fire but also lighting this as well. And then that again to vertex. Okay, so this is there, this is here, we got this, and now what do you do? Well, we bring our character back up. Here she is. She was there all along, lurking around. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this object, and we want to lock it to this armature, not to the mesh. The mesh is no good because that is being deformed by this stuff. So we're going to take this and we're going to put a constraint rather than a parenting. And there's a really complicated reason for that. And it's going to take me too long to explain, so I'm just not going. So we're going to make this a child of this bone system. So I'm going to grab, and it will say armature, and I'm going to go, yeah. And then which bone? Well, the left hand. And now it's disappeared. And the reason why it's disappeared is because the bone was probably originally here before scales and all that kind of stuff. So that's why. So now we need to move it into position. Move it any way you want. I am going to go into orthographic view just because it's a little bit easier to do it, and you just need to, and also kind of make it the right size, G, and go around the front. And I mean, it's a bit fiddly, but you know, that kind of looks all right. And yeah, that looks pretty good. I mean, it's good enough. It's absolutely impossible to get this perfect. So just try it and get it close enough. And honestly, when you render it, no one will notice. Okay, so I'm just going to look through the camera quickly, and this will become apparent in a minute. And so, God, it's a plane now. Oh my God, it's like planes, trains, and automobiles here. So when I press play on here, you can see that my fire is kind of moving around. And what it's doing is it's moving around with my object. And this is epic because this is exactly what I want it to do. And so it's basically, it looks like it's there, but it's kind of not. And that's kind of what we want. Okay, we're going to change the color of this. And I'm going to eyedrop like some of that so that when we go to here, the rendered, we get that kind of thing. Okay, so this is looking good. Now the problem is lighting. Like if we go into cycles, you can see we get the lighting, and this is emitting light, but we don't get that in Eevee. Okay, and Eevee, because it's a graphics card renderer, doesn't give you that. The lighting that we're getting is from our reflection map, and actually that all that's doing is we want that to be a reflection map. But what we really want is we want this light here, we want this to be bright, and I mean bright, like let's make it 10,000. Maybe 10,000 is a bit too much, but 10,000 is about right. And then we want to take this object and we want to make this, because this is an emission, we'll make this nice and bright so it reflects that. Okay, and so now we've got a nice bright light, and the bright light itself is a bit of a dodgy color, so we're going to change that to like kind of like a yellow, but not like kind of super yellow, but yellow enough. And now you can see that it's kind of lighting our character. Let me just turn off the armature, and you can see it's lighting her, and this is great. And what we're going to do is just going to move it around, and we can see, awesome, it's moving it around, and we go along like this, and we flick through. That's weird. It's kind of, what it's creating is when we get here, it's kind of creating a little bit of a shadow, and the shadow is coming from this. This is casting a shadow. So what we've got to do is we've got to change the shadow mode, which is in settings. You go down to settings, change shadow mode to none, and that will make the lighting a little bit more realistic. So now when we turn on our scene object and our donut, you can see that we're now getting like some really nice shadows, and this is great. And so now we're getting something that's looking pretty good. The only things that you could probably want to change are in the materials of your let me just kind of save. Let's go into rendered mode. So in the materials of our light here, you could probably change that a little bit to kind of make it a bit less. There's probably a bunch of things in here that will do it, but just change some of those to kind of sort of alter the, not that one, and those will alter the way that this works. The other thing is, I'm still worried about that. I'm not going to put the subsurface up a tiny little bit. And subsurface will basically, it will absorb some of the light. So you can see that she's starting to absorb some of it, just a little bit. And that will just make her look a little bit more realistic. Okay, so that's basically the setup for the torch. So the torch is all good. We'll just go back into here and we can have a look at the I just want to have a look at the animation, and that looks good. And now what we're going to do is going to build the rest of the scene, and then I'm going to show you how to animate the camera. So I suggest saving what you're doing. So I'm going to go save as, and mine is scene 4. And then go save, and then that's it.